Good evening, everyone, once again. We are very grateful for participating and joining this first webinar as a Classroom to Career initiative. My name is Moyoluwa Akitunde. I am a postdoctoral researcher at Allen University of Applied Sciences in Germany. And the Classroom to Career initiative is just made up of about three of us being microbiologists. Grace Akinleye is a microbiologist, also a fresh graduate of Osun State University, and Jesunifemi Akinajani, also a graduate of microbiology from University of Ibadan. This initiative is aimed at making sure that we all have an understanding of microbiology. We want everyone to be able to come to realize that microbiology or biological science is beyond what we know, or we end up as teachers, because that's what a lot of people want to believe that happens when you study microbiology. However, there's so much for us to be enlightened about as microbiologists or biological scientists. There's so much impact we bring to the society or the community of research. For instance, I'm a microbiologist. My PhD is in industrial microbiology. However, my postdoc currently is in the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering. I am the only biologist in my research group. Everybody wants to do something related to biology. It looks like every multidisciplinary research has a part that biology has to play in. So we need to really know more about what we can do with ourselves and how we can apply our study of microbiology in general. So today we had about 240 something registered participants, and a lot of about 46% were undergraduate students, and we had some postgraduate students also. We had fresh graduates that are unemployed. It was only about 7% that were graduates that were employed, and we have some lecturers and researchers joining us, all joining for different reasons: to gain understanding, to see how they can network, to see what they can do with microbiology, to know that we are not just learning microbiology to end up as teachers or teach biology in secondary school. So I want us to, from our meeting today, to be able to see and take as much from our guest speakers, because they are experienced, they have the knowledge, they have walked through this path, and they have so much to give us. So I want this meeting to be a time for us to learn, unlearn what we have thought about before, and also relearn, to learn new things. And I also want us to know that this initiative is intended to continue, to host it bi-monthly, to be able to get more speakers to speak to us, share their path, look at what we can do as microbiologists, where we can function. So we will hold several sessions. Also, we will share the takeaways from each session as emails, and also post it on our social media groups pages, where you can always go back to and check what you have learned, read through it again, digest it, and apply it, because it's not enough to attend webinars or seminars or meetings and not apply what we have learned. So I want us to not just attend because, oh, I think they'll say something that will matter to me, but we should be able to apply what we have learned and make it part of our everyday life. So this would also make the recording available. We hope to be able to upload the recording on a YouTube page so that people can have access to it, and it is not just a one-off thing, so it's continuous. So with that, I would like to tell you a bit about our speakers. We'll start with Dr. Helen Onyeaka. She's an associate professor And she's also the deputy director of Birmingham Institute for Sustainability and Climate Action at the University of Birmingham. And I will read a short bio about Dr. Helen Onyeaka. So Dr. Helen Onyeaka is an industrial microbiologist. She's a fellow of the Institute of Food Science and Technology. So in front of her name on the fly, I'm sure you saw FIFST. So that's also a fellow of the Institute of Food Science and Technology. And also she's also a fellow of the Higher Education Academy, that's the HEA. With over 25 years of experience, her career in microbiology to date has been varied, with experience gained in industry as well as academia, both teaching and research. Dr. Onyeaka lectures and leads modules on various postgraduate and undergraduate courses in food microbiology, food safety, and chemical engineering at the University of Birmingham. She supervises PhD and MSc research projects related to industrial microbiology. She also plans and delivers training for continuous professional development, including courses for food safety inspection officers, the food industry, and international trainees from the Saudi Food and Drug Authority. Dr. Onyeaka's PhD research examined the impact of individual microbial cells due to a changing microenvironment with regards to their physiology and metabolic pathway, and suggested how this knowledge could be used to predict as well as optimize future process performance in the industry. She received the Breeden postgraduate and ICHEMI, that's the Institute of Chemical Engineers Biochemical Engineering Award for her doctoral thesis. There's something that caught my attention. I was at the FEMS Micro 2025 conference at Milan like 2 weeks ago, and I came across the Applied Microbiology International stand, and they had this magazine, The Microbiologist, from their annual 2025 report, I think. And I also saw there that Dr. Onyeaka last year, she won the Basil Jarvis Food Security and Innovation Award. And also, there's something that they wrote that really stuck to me, and it says that Dr. Onyeaka's work exemplifies the intersection of science, innovation, and global cooperation to address one of the world's most pressing challenges. So she does a lot of things in innovation, sustainable development, and food security. So with this, I want us to welcome Dr. Helen Onyeaka to be our first speaker for today. You're welcome, ma. You can proceed. We can hear you, ma. You have to mute.
Yeah, I said that's really humbling, honestly, thinking about it. I didn't even realize it's me you were talking about. How do I want to share my slides. How? I'm in Zoom now. I don't have the options.
You should be able to. No, okay, sorry. I think now you can share it.
Okay. We should have tested it before. Okay, yeah. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, ma. Yes,
So I just wanted to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. And also welcome to this first inaugural Classroom to Career webinar series. It's really an honor. When I got the email, I know I'm very busy, but I was like, I have to make time because I believe in knowledge exchange is quite important and key, in progression. So you really introduced myself, so that makes it, easier. So, but just to give you a bit snapshot, I'm going to tell you a bit about my journey. I moved from industry to academia, and now I'm working with industries, quite a few of them at the moment. And also about why microbiology matters. I'm very passionate about it. So I try to calm myself down because when I start talking about microbes, I really get excited, okay? So give you some real life applications and, maybe something towards the early entry roles and postgraduate roles. What are the opportunities you can look out for? And things like skill certification, or cross-disciplinary collaborations, because that's quite key. And that's what set me really apart because, I'm in chemical engineering and I lecture there and happen to be an industrial microbiology. So that is really, and people say, Helen, what are you doing there? But I'll tell you my story as we go along. So please, if you do have any question, put it in the chat and we can talk about it, okay? So now I'm going to show you, 1 minute, what's happening? So moving on then. Okay, I have to go to the other slide and let me move this. Just give me a minute. Just trying to use my mover. Okay, so this is my journey to the lab coat. So you can see myself in a family. I'm a family of 6, the first daughter. I remember in Nigeria when I grew up, my parents wanted me to study medicine, but I had other ideas. I was quite, passionate about microorganisms because I remember going for a lecture in microbiology, just a little bit about microbiology, and I was so interested and excited about how those tiny microorganisms can make a tremendous impact. And I'll tell you why in a bit, the statement that really got me hooked into microbiology. But that's me, during COVID period, I get so excited about teaching microbiology and food safety. And so that's me setting up my lab. So my journey started with industrial microbiology in Nigeria, then came to the United Kingdom, did my PhD, my master's, sorry, in biomedical sciences. It was quite interesting, discipline. Within that discipline, we looked at different the role of nitric oxide in initiation of labor, and I did quite a lot of research around strep B infection in neonatal period, quite a lot exciting, but then moved on to PhD. But after my PhD, I had some career blocks, and I'll come back to that. But I just wanted to show you my family and then me. Now, one statement that really, encapsulates my passion for microbiology is something stated by Louis Pasteur. So he's made this statement that the role of infinitely small in nature is infinitely large. So this encapsulates how I view microbiology. Imagine microorganisms you can't even see, yet they have tremendous impact in our world. And you can see, I can see microbiology, discipline being the solution to so many global, issues we face today. So now, during COVID, I remember I just thinking about viruses, how tiny they are, and yet they brought the whole world to a standstill. So I decided to start thinking about mapping it out, viruses, remembering what Louis Pasteur said about that tiny microorganism we can't even see. Viruses are tinier than bacteria, and yet, look at what he's done. He had lots of negative impacts, some positive, like, air quality was improved that period, but he was able to bring the whole world to a standstill. So, and I wrote this article, and this article is being cited quite a lot because, the idea is to emphasize how microorganisms can really play a big role and hold everyone to a standstill, so that was really very exciting thing I did during COVID, just mapping it out and seeing it. And since then, this is my top cited article, and it's informed lots of policies, which is quite interesting. I mean, that is really good. So a bit about me. So over 25 years, you've talked about this already. And I'm also quite passionate about education. So I'm a senior fellow in the Higher Education Academy. I lecture here. My lecture spans across food safety, food microbiology, and I lecture in environmental and public health and also in chemical engineering. And like you said, I supervise master students and PhD students. And the exciting projects we're doing, hopefully I have opportunity to tell you a bit about them. It's quite diverse and it involves industry and academia as well. So my career spans across academia. So I remember doing industrial placement in Nigeria, and I worked in a brewery, and it was quite exciting seeing in talking about safety and what goes on during the brewery process, Parboard Brewery in Port Harcourt. And I was, that really captured my excitement about how microbes play a role in alcohol production and the various things you can do with that. So I still do some research now, even in brewery. And the research I'm doing at the moment is the waste that we have. For example, the yeast, we're using it to make biodegradable plastics that can be used for films, and not just biodegradable plastics. We're incorporating niacin, which is an antimicrobial that is produced by microorganisms to give you the added benefit of having an antimicrobial property. So that's quite innovative. And my students were nominated for an award for that particular research. So you see, even along the line, the skills you acquire is transferable. Okay, when I came to the United Kingdom, I worked I worked in a hospital, and it was really interesting job because that period we were able to associate Helicobacter pylori with gastric ulcer and peptic ulcer. So that was really good, amazing. And we did quite a lot of experiments while I was there, but that kind of set my goal towards, wow, I can see microorganisms playing a role in quite a few other aspects. But I knew working in the lab wasn't for me, because I tried it out and I had an accident once where someone collected a sample and it kind of exploded in the cabinet. And I knew that wasn't my passion. So I went on, I moved on. But I acquired a lot of skills while I did that role. And I moved from sputum to urine to feces sample and to biopsies. And it was really exciting seeing different colors of sputum, different colors of urine. And I'm thinking, wow, I really appreciate people that work in hospitals in the lab because it's quite a lot of things they do there and research they do is and collecting samples and analysis is not easy. I tried it, but I knew it wasn't for me. But I do appreciate people that work in hospitals. So now, in terms of my research, it spans across 5 key areas: the use of preservatives in food production. Now, one other thing I do is the safety of reformulated food. So now we have this sugar bill and salt bill going on. Everyone should reduce their sugar. But when you reduce that sugar, what happens to the food chemistry? How does that then impact on safety? Because microbes that would not normally grow in that food, for example, will start to grow. So what is the safety of those reformulated food? So I do a lot of research in that area and trying to validate and processes that are reducing their sugar or their fat or their salt. So you see, microbiology plays a role there as well. So you don't just come up and decide to change your formulation without having it done properly because there's been outbreaks happening in that area. So I do a lot of work in that area. Then innovative technology in food production. So we're looking at green processes. How can we produce things in a greener way using things like ohmic heating or cold plasma technology that is not really dependent on energy? Then a lot of my research works on food waste valorization. So we're looking at eggshells, cocoa bean shells, coffee waste, and trying to get bioactive compounds from them that can be used in animal feed or going back into cosmetics. And then sustainable food production is what I work in. One of my research on how we can use algae to produce flour for the food industry, like in baking and bread making. That is one of the award-winning research and it's gone really global. And I have a lot of Canadians really calling in, Helen, can we work together? So it's quite interesting, but don't forget, I started as an industrial microbiologist, ended up in chemical engineering. I've done, working in a hospital, and I've done other research also. But I'm able to pull all these skills from all these various aspects to be where I am now and be able to work in interdisciplinary research. So that then leads you to the role I have now as a deputy director of the Institute for Sustainability and Climate Action, where we bring together all the university sustainability efforts with external stakeholders so we can co-create solutions for climate impact and mitigate the impact of climate change. Now, that role, microbes play a very important role in climate change mitigation. Very, very important. And it's something we're looking at, and it's something that is not really well developed, but there is hope, okay? So hopefully I'll point out some areas that needs development and that you can start to think about. Okay, so I try and calm down with my excitement because I get excited talking about microorganisms. So why microbiology matters today? So why is it very important? So microbiologists are key players in public health and innovation. So imagine during COVID-19 diagnostics, vaccine platforms, antimicrobial surveillance, they all need microbiology, our microbiologists, in it and experts in that area. Also, when you think about vaccine development, food safety, and sustainability, which is the area I work, from mRNA stability studies to fermentation, alternative proteins, microbes sits at the heart of the supply chain. So they're very key. In terms of health, agriculture, environment, and industry, I'm working recently looking at gut microbiome and how if your gut microbiome it's not in order, it can lead to dysbiosis and disease. And we're working towards how can we ensure that the hospital foods especially take that into consideration when they prepare meals for people that are poorly. And we're looking at writing a policy brief based on that. So that's quite a very important study. So because the gut microbiome, it's quite key. So soil probiotics, we need that because we need to boost the crop yield and and ensure that we're getting the right microbes in. So, and that's leaning towards personalized nutrition. So microbiologists are needed for that as well. So I just rate microbiology is not just lab work, okay? It's a gateway to solving real world problems. Regulatory policies, entrepreneurship, if you have the skills, digital health dashboard, microbiology to me is just an entry point to a multi-billion-dollar challenge. Microbiology is the best field. And I'm really happy that I went on to study microbiology because my parents wanted me to do medicine. And I knew that wasn't my calling because I don't like the sight of blood. I didn't really like it. So, and then I remember dropping out in biology because I didn't like biology and the blood and the dissection. But my mom insisted, if you really want to do anything related to science, you must study microbiology. You must study biology. So I'm quite grateful to her that she insisted and I took biology course. So that enabled me to do industrial microbiology. So amazing. So global health, food security, climate change, bioinnovation economy or bioeconomy, if you want to say it, microbiology has a role in all these things. So let's look at some real life applications of microbiology. Okay, so now detect disease, develop vaccines, control infections. Clinical labs, you need to run PCR, ELISA, next generation sequencing to pinpoint the pathogens, you know, as fast as possible so you can mitigate the impact of if there was any disease or any outbreak, you need to do that. So rapid testing, Claire, is very, very important. And I've worked in some specific tests with some companies, and they're looking at how can we develop a test kit that can detect E. coli, for example, or Enterobacteriaceae or the coliform family. And watch this space, they're coming up, Most of them are based on ATP, but that's quite generic, but they're now becoming more specific. So that's one of the areas, in terms of real life application. And there are some kits that are available now, which is quite good. So another thing is to ensure food safety, quality control, fermentation. So QA microbiologists, they swap surfaces, they do plate counts, they validate HACCP plans, which is quite important. And also they do challenge studies to be able to set, like expiry dates or for example, microbial shelf life studies and or milk, for example. Okay. So we can use microbes to boost crops, clean pollution, bioremediation, treat wastewater. And one thing we're doing in my lab at the moment is I call it bioaccumulation, where we're using microorganisms to accumulate, a heavy metal contamination in water. So one day, being a dreamer that I am, I was dreaming, oh, Helen, you can actually use microorganisms to mop up gold from the gold water tailings, And I was like, gold maybe. And then I found that someone already doing that study at Warwick University, they're using E. coli to be specific to mop up those gold that is in the water tailings where the gold mine. And then they can harvest it. So I was like, wow, maybe I should think about using microorganisms to mop up diamonds, But that's just my own personal joke. And I laugh about it. Diamond is a girl's best friend. So you never know. Watch this space. So yeah, microbiology is so important. And we're using it to clean wastewater at the moment. Even, we have oil spills. One of my students is from Nigeria, where we have oil spills in water. And we're looking at how can we use microorganisms to mop up those chemical contaminants in water. So very important, wastewater treatment. So in terms of microbes. You can use it to make drugs, vaccines, and, E. coli, you all know that insulin, can be used to make monoclonal antibodies and enzymes at scale, really big scale. So this is quite important. So if any of these sectors I've just mentioned sparks your interest, just jot it down and then start to map it, you know. What do you need to get to that, area? What is the specific entry level requirement or postgraduate career roles do you need if any of these real life applications sparks your interest? There's quite a lot of them. So let's drill down to undergraduates, what are the opportunities for undergraduates? When I was an undergraduate, I did quite a lot. I'm very proactive, okay? But I want to give you some 5 key concrete actions you can do. Join science clubs. It's very important, and also volunteer in teaching labs. I used to be, when I was studying, I used to really volunteer my time, and the lab technicians, they love me. And I'm still in touch with them till today because I volunteer. Oh, can I come and help you? Can I do this? And then I was learning, those skills, apply for research placements, summer or international placements. I did quite a lot of placements during my degree in Nigeria. I worked in a brewery. I worked in Coca-Cola. I use those skills till today to inform my research. So those skills are never gone. They're quite transferable. So industrial training in hospitals, food and environment. And to tell you something, that was really interesting. When I went to do my 6 months industrial placement, that was where I met my husband. So I'm not saying go and look for your husbands there, but I'll just say that was where I met my husband. He happens to be the doctor in the brewery, and we just met and sparked off a conversation. Okay. So the other thing is that you need to skill up on lab techniques. You need to learn. And now we have all this media. You can actually go and learn how to do things on virtually. We didn't have it in my time, but you need to learn, data handling. You can go online and train yourself. Scientific writing is so important. I mean, that is so key because now when we get applications for people that are wanting to do masters or PhD, if you've done some scientific writing, that sets you up, we're like, wow, she's able to articulate what she's done. So that's quite good. So engage early with professional societies and science fair. I mean, that is so important. You try and ensure that you're part of a society, and then you'll be able to, they have grants for undergraduates. Use those grants available, apply for them. I did that quite a lot. And when I was even doing my PhD, I used to apply to so many organizations, sponsor me. I want to go to this international conference and I'll have your logo on my presentation. And I got quite a lot of sponsorship, So you can do that, do not allow anything to limit you. Just keep trying, okay? So now moving on to other things you can do. Entry-level career opportunities, laboratory technicians, I mentioned that, quality control analyst in food, pharmaceutical industry, or water utilities. So that's opportunities for you there. Or if you wanted to go into environmental monitoring officer in public health labs or NGOs, there are opportunities there. Sales or technical support for biotech, instruments, amazing. When we finished our PhD, I even remember quite a few of my friends went on to selling flow cytometry, which is equipment you use. And even at the undergraduate, some of my students go on, to work with biotech industries and, sell the equipment and stuff like that, or test kits, yeah? Another thing is research assistant in academia. So we do have opportunities here, or contract research organizations. So those are opportunities. But one thing that is quite important, and they're looking for people in regulatory, documentation associated kind of roles. So there are opportunities really, and in terms of regulatory compliance. So that's another opportunity you can look for. So even in these roles, soft skills like communication, teamwork, adaptability sets you apart, So you must ensure that you keep up to date with things like that. So if you're eyeing a master's, so yeah, these are food industry, more things, testing for microbial safety in food production, ensuring hygiene and contamination control, and other avenues. Yeah, I've mentioned this. So these are other things you can do if you're thinking of microbiology. But in terms of masters, once you hold a master's degree, you're no longer generalized microbiologist. You're a specialist now with the depth to own a particular niche, okay? And the breadth to lead cross-functional teams. So it's quite good when you specialize in that area. So, it depends on the role you have. So if it's a clinical microbiologist, you can work in hospital reference labs, you add value there. So in that case, you're interpreting blood culture, you track antimicrobial resistance, you advise on outbreak control. I remember when I worked in the clinical microbiology lab, one of the things we did that was quite exciting was the role of strep B infection in neonatal period. So pregnant women, any pregnant woman that comes in, we screen them to see if they have strep B infection because then that goes on to the baby and then that leads to pneumonia and other complications. So that was quite, clinical microbiologists, I do respect their role. So it's quite important because they're able to control that before it gets onto the baby, treat it. Or you can be a food safety expert, design HACCP plans, run pathogen challenge tests, train staff on good manufacturing practices. So there are opportunities even within food safety expert role, and you can, if you want to be a food inspector, like in the UK here, I train food inspectors that go on to inspect food premises. Pharmaceutical microbiology is another one. I looked into clinical trials at one point and I was like, wow, quite intense. So how do you ensure the drugs are quite sterile? Vaccine plans, because sterility is quite important when you're producing anything. Because if you're running a fermentation, for example, and the vessels and every conditions are not sterile, so when you're growing your product of interest, you're also amplifying the contaminant. You end up not getting the product you desire. So that is a very big thing, and imagine the waste that goes on, especially if you're scaling up, to a large industrial scale. So you need to validate the clean rooms, perform sterility, and things like that. When you have batches, you have to test them and do more testing. So you have environmental microbiologists, water utilities and things like that. You need to monitor effluents, optimize bioremediation if you wanted to go into that role, and model a microbial ecosystem. Okay, so these are things you can do. For example, think of a clinical microbiologist during COVID. What would they be doing? They'll be the first people to validate the new PCR panels. So in food, if you're working in food, for example, you might be the person who proves a plant-based yogurt stays safe for 30 days on the shelf, okay? So things like that. So it's very important that you identify which area you're thinking about and then start to look into opportunities there. So in terms of regulatory and consultancy, consultancy work is quite amazing. I do a bit of consultancy. So there are regulatory agencies like NAFDAC, WHO, here FSA, you have some that rely on master's level microbiologists to evaluate dossiers, inspect facilities, and also to draft technical guidelines. And this is really, really important, if you are to do that. Then consultancy is quite good because it offers you bespoke audits, water testing for hotels. You can do that, microbial risk assessments for startup businesses and things like that. Yeah. So I just want to emphasize, transferable skills. They're very critical, when you're doing any role within microbiology, if it's like reading standards or negotiating with clients or clear reporting, you need to, you're able to do those things. So those transferable skills are quite important, okay? So now moving on to, I think more opportunities, for master students, scientific communication and technical writing, very important. You draft standard operating procedures, users manual, e-learning modules are things you can do. These are indispensable in ISO certified labs, writing the SOPs. Or you can become a medical or regulatory writer, translating complex data into clear summaries, for FDAs or journal reviews if you wanted to. Journal review is something I also like to encourage you to do because it helps you to see what people are writing and helps you to develop your critical analytical skills. So journal reviewing is quite good. And you can also build your own personal brand. You can blog about foodborne outbreaks, or you can even host a podcast on antimicrobial resistance, or write opinion pieces for Applied Microbiology International, which the good news is I happen to be one of the trustees. So I was just appointed as a trustee this July, which is quite exciting, So yeah, so you need to think, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm quite proactive at sharing lots of things about microbiology and just and sustainability and how this started because I wanted to attract more students coming to the University of Birmingham, and I'm quite passionate about microorganisms. And I saw LinkedIn as an opportunity to voice my excitement. So I do write every Monday. I publish something every month. I publish a newsletter, that comes in LinkedIn. And the Monday, publishing is really exciting. People engage, and I try to get them to engage and say, "What do you think?" And if there's any outbreak, I can reshare the outbreak that has been shared and give my opinion. So because visibility is quite important, it depends on what you want to do, but I think visibility is played a very key role in my career. For example, because of this, what I do for LinkedIn and, creating, you know, um, thought pieces and also sharing about microbiology, getting very excited. I've been invited to do quite a lot, okay? Example, to write books, to collaborate. And so if you look at my profile, I collaborate with people from different, parts of the world. And but one thing that is quite important, expert opinion, okay? Because how are people going to know who you are? So luckily, I just done something recently with Corey's. They make fridges, and they wanted expert opinion about where should we store things in the fridge? How can we ensure our fridge is safe? And I've given some expert tips on about refrigeration. And now that particular tips I've given is been amplified. A lot of news have carried it to say, Dr. Nyaka, an expert in microbiology, is like, do not put your milk in the door because it's not safe. So what I'm trying to say, there are opportunities out there if you want to blog about food safety or foodborne outbreaks, or even to start creating your own niche, to be an expert in your area. The opportunities are there. So you just need to, look at for those opportunities and share your passion. So there are other global fellowships and certificates. So you can apply for fellowship if, like Chevron or Commonwealth, Erasmus, they pay tuition, provide stipend, and you can expand your network. Okay. And you can all look at professional certifications, So there are so many things you can do once you have your master's to start narrowing down. You can do ISO HACCP certification up to level 4 if you wanted, GMP certification, and quite a lot of them you can apply for. So make your passion uh, if your passion, is on science communication, please go down that line. But if it's on, meeting innovation or being in industry, you can now start to frame your what you're doing, your research around that area. Okay, so let me go down to more of career opportunities for master students. So you can look at begin a PhD in microbiology if you wanted to, or in biotechnology or public health. It's limitless. I did my PhD in chemical engineering, and there was a reason for that, and I'll tell you a bit more about my PhD in a few slides to come. Or you can serve as a teaching or research assistant. I did that as well. And I also supervise on the graduates, when I was doing my PhD. So these opportunities, even when I did my master's, I was proactively involved in undergraduates, even if it's, can I support them? Can I mentor them? What can I do? So it depends on what you want to do, But what I'm trying to say in a nutshell is interdisciplinary hotspots are there. You have microbial genomics, you have bioinformatics, you have One Health policy. What is it, that you're really passionate about? So look into that. So also people going to in entrepreneurship or in innovation. So you can start up your lab-based, work if you wanted to, or project development. Depends on what your passion is. But please do not limit yourself. What I'm saying, go for it, try. What I'm trying to encourage everyone here is to have a mindset shift, move from I can to I will, because you can do it. One thing I tell my students to encourage them is, and no, I'd say, okay, those people, number one, that have achieved so much, how many heads do they have? And they'll all answer, Dr. Nyaka, one. I was like, okay, how many heads do you have? One. Fine. And I tell them, nobody can stop you from achieving what you want. It's only yourself and self-doubt. So keep trying. Failure is okay. You fail in some, you pick yourself up, you keep trying. And that's been my journey in academia. It's not been easy sailing at all. It's taken a number of years, but I've been persevering because perseverance is a skill that you need if you want to, you know where you want to get to. You just keep trying, okay? So now, if you postgraduate, whether you're employed or unemployed, whether you have a job or you're in an awkward what next phase, it's okay, You can apply for positions in academia, in research institutes, on NGOs or industry, but you need to tailor your CV, okay, or towards that you know don't just give a generic CV. You have to tailor your CV to that. So if you've optimized a fermenter during your thesis, for example, you need to emphasize things like, oh, during my fermentation process I had a 20% yield boost. Yeah, so not just talk about the method. What did you achieve? That is very important, okay? So you can explore global fellowship, like I mentioned before, Chevron, Commonwealth Scholarship. They do cover tuition, stipend, on then you have all kinds of networking you can do because there's networking within the Commonwealth scholars we have here and the Chevron scholars, okay? So alumni networks sometimes offer fast track, hiring or funding. So do look at your university. Do they have such funding? If not, that's okay, okay? So there's lots of fellowships going on at the moment. Please, even at the university, if you're interested, let me know and I can point you all, or I can send some of the information to Moyi and she can share it out, okay? So if you wanted to work in a biotech, startup, diagnostics or consulting firm, you know, startup value agility, so you wear lab coats and strategy hats in the same day. So it's very important, so that you think like that. And you need to look at how, you can monetize, because you can, they are looking at how can they ensure that their system is very it's more of economic yield. What yield can they do? So imagine if you're thinking that way, well, how can I ensure that I bring value into this work? What can I do? What are they already doing? What value can I add to it? And you can pitch your story around that, okay? So you can enroll in advanced skill certification or cross-disciplinary training. Data science is something everyone needs to get into if you're not looking for something to do. Quality assurance, project management. I did project management as well. And when I do things like that, it's just so I learn because I love learning. I mean, my husband had to say, don't go back to school again. I kept going back, learning more things. I even did teachers training, to learn how to teach secondary school. And I did another teachers training, postgraduate in academic practice to learn how to actually ensure that my lectures are very engaging and impactful. So I did all those training. I've done quite a lot, So yeah, it's quite important that you invest in yourself to ensure you have those skills that are needed. So you need to collaborate internationally. It's quite important through research networks, okay? So you have Microbiology Society, Applied Microbiology Society. They have networks for young scientists, network for different people that work in different area. Get involved. I'm even part of the Chemistry Society, Royal Chemistry Society. We have our local branch. I'm there because I'm looking at how can we work together. I'm not a chemist, but I work with chemists to see how cross intersection we can work together. So I enrolled myself and I'm part of that particular network, that is nothing to do with microbiology, but their intersection there. So you need to build a publishing portfolio. I can't even say that enough, but in a reputable journal, okay? When we have PhD applicants here, I mean, we see people that have 20 articles they've written in top quality journals. So it's quite important that you just don't publish only, you can publish some in local university journals, but do publish in journals because those things set you apart when you're applying for funding. I have quite a few I've advertised recently. And, you want to justify getting somebody, but one of the things they say, Helen, how is their writing skills, How many publications have they done, because it's a competition between different staff bringing in students and you want them to take on the role. So one other thing you can do, and I do that quite a lot, is mentor students because that's quite important. Because when you teach or mentor somebody, you're honing on your leadership skills. So you can write that down, you know. So universities look for postdocs, for example, who can design modules, who is been involved in mentoring. You've been able to pass your knowledge around, you know, to other people. So it's quite important. So all these options are mentioned here. They demand a robust skill set. Okay. So it's quite important. So let's look at what are the skills that you need. Let's very quickly look at that. So you need laboratory and analytical skills. Aseptic technique is quite important. Culturing, staining, PCR, and things like that, you know, use. So you need to stress reproducibility and digital traceability when you're thinking of, if you're writing your CV, you know? So you need to also document all the skills you've learned, even in laboratory practices. These things are the things that can go into your CV. What did you do? Put them in. Data competence is key, is very important skill that we need. You know, statistical analysis, what have you done? Have you done any Python, you know, or digital visualization? Employers, they love candidates who move, you know, move away from just colony counting. Okay? What of coding? What else have you done with that? You know, so don't just put colony counting, you know, that's okay, but what above that, what next? You know, one other thing that is quite important, you know, and it's a free digital skill you can learn is about predictive microbiology, you know. So there are softwares you can even go and teach yourself. I teach my students here predictive microbiology. How can we use those data set that is already available to be able to predict if you have a product that of interest, you know, in terms of shelf life and contamination. Is it going to get contaminated after a certain time? So there are certain skill softwares, quite a few modeling softwares are online. You can actually teach yourself. So other skill that you need is communication and teamwork, you know? So cross-disciplinary collaboration is very, very key, you know, and also shows leadership in group setting is very important. So ensure that you have those skills and develop those skills if you don't have them. Now, personal mindset, a professional mindset is important. Critical thinking, time management is key, and how adaptable are you across interdisciplinary role? Very key. So what I tend to do is use what is called STAR method: situation, task, action, and result. Use that to frame problem solving and anecdotes, you know, anecdotes. So use that: situation, task, action, and results. Very important. So you need to think about what are the skills that you don't have. Note them down. And then you can decide, you know what, this summer I'm going to try and upskill myself. I'm going to think about, okay, what are the skill goals I need? What do I need to acquire to upskill myself so I can apply for those kind of jobs or those kind of roles? So it's very important that we think of that. Yeah. So that's one thing I'm challenging all of you to do. I do that myself. I think, okay, AI, and to be able to know more about AI in and microbiology, you know, and digital skills, you know, digital microbiology, I call it, you know, so I'm learning a lot and I'm teaching it, you know, because as I'm teaching, I'm learning. So those are the skills I need to understand now. Digital twin, what does that really mean? Because we need that when we're talking about cold chain, and we need that when we're talking about, you know, the when you're talking about moving food from farm to fork, all those transports and everything. How do you use digital skills to ensure that the food is safe from farm to fork? So I'm learning those skills. I don't know them, but you know, this shows that you're actively, proactively upskilling yourself. So it's quite important, okay? So there are certain certification and professional bodies like Applied Microbiology International. You know, you can join IFST, Nigerian Society for Microbiology, Microbiology Society, you know, ASM. So membership gives you journal access, discounted conferences, and also the opportunity to get a mentor. So quite a few of those places offer mentorship, you know. And the good thing about it is the student rates are quite low, okay? So I know quite a lot of my students, you know, will have a budget for Netflix. So I'll tell them if you have a budget for Netflix, you can also have a budget for being a member of a society, you know? So yeah, so it's quite important. So there are other courses online you can do. You can enroll in Future Learn or WHO Lab certification program. You can learn about wash safety courses in them, and and when you get those courses, you can display the e-badge on LinkedIn. Just shout about it, because what happens when HR, they're recruiting, they look at things like that, they scan for them, okay? And HACCP is mandatory. You need to have that. Start with level 1, level 2, level 3, then go on. It's quite important that you have that, okay? So get HACCP, ISO, good manufacturing practice training. These are quite important skills that you need to have. Then, of course, you need to stay updated through webinars like we're doing today and conferences, engage, network, and network. So combining the right network with visible proof of competence and opportunities, they tend to find you, because you already have those things. So please, after this session, what I'll encourage you to do is to join one or ensure you have a certification in some of these things. There are many more, but I've just put a few here, and pursue them. Ensure that you have them, small steps at a time. They're quite key in progression. So then, now, bridging the gap between academia and industry. This is so, so important, okay? So you can seek industry-based projects or collaboration. What I did, I pitched my thesis, to industries. I pitched, even when I finished my master's thesis is what I used to pitch to get a PhD, and my PhD was fully sponsored, So you do things like that, so you seek those kind of collaborations and pitch yourself. So you need to develop commercially relevant research if you want to engage with industry. So quite a few of my projects have commercial impact, and I work with quite a few industries. For example, I'm working with a company called BioVDA. They have developed a light that kills viruses, kills bacteria, and I'm working in partnership with them here at the University of Birmingham. And we're seeing this light put in houses to, reduce mold, to kill the mold there, put on trains, and put in food premises. Even in the light is really good, even in the veterinary sector. So that is just ordinary light. It's not UV light, but they've used a particular wavelength to either kills and destroys pathogenic microbes, okay? So I've done the validation and the verification analysis for them here at the university with my colleague in my lab, so those are the kind of things that you can get involved in to bridge the gap between academia and industry. And also in my role as a deputy director at the BSCA, that's what I do, because at the end of the day, you can do your research in your lab, but unless you're engaging with external stakeholders, your research will always be in the lab. So you need to make sure your research matters and also look for opportunities to work with, external stakeholders, either in grant applications or other places that you can really amplify your research. So you can participate in conferences, career fairs. I do that sometimes. I volunteer sometimes, when I was a student, actually, you go to career fairs, and you have opportunity to meet other people as well, and then you put it up on LinkedIn, get contacts there, and then, and follow it up, okay? So you also know, one other thing is learn the language of business, patents, products, development is very important. Because if you don't, all you do, is like you sell your ideas, and people are quite quick to take your ideas. So you need to understand about patents. What does that mean? How can I ensure before I get into collaboration with somebody, we have signed an NDA? Okay, what does NDA mean? How do I protect my work? So it's quite important that we're quite knowledgeable, So if science is what, business is so what, okay? And then you have to talk about now what, think about it that way. So you need to move beyond so what to now what can we do, okay? So sometimes, the fastest way to market is to build it yourself. So if you're interested in being an entrepreneur, entrepreneurship is an amazing thing you can do. So you can launch, for example, a lab testing service for food, water, and hygiene if you wanted to. I have quite a lot of students. I teach at the Osiri University, which is a university that is based in America. It's an online university. And, it was quite a blessing because I happened to teach quite a lot of entrepreneurs that were just making food, different types of food. So we talk about basic food safety and went on to detailed food safety. So you don't just produce food at home and start marketing it. You have to think it through. So it was quite a blessing for me to engage with those students. And they were really, really, amazing. the concepts they're coming up with, was really good. Different types of food, baby formulas. So I'm taking up, I had to teach them about the microbes to think about and to worry about and how they can ensure that their product is safe, because lots of people are going into production, but you have to ensure that you do it safely. Very, very key. So if you wanted to go into that, and if you wanted to be an advisor or consultant for people that are going into businesses and starting up startups, so you can actually give your expert knowledge and test. So you can launch a lab testing services too for those people that are starting up businesses, water portability. We'll have all this pure water and stuff like that. Is it really hygienic? You can be testing the water for them and giving them ideas on how to produce that water. Shelf life testing, okay? Or you can partner with an accredited lab, or rent a bench space, things like that. Use career services, be creative if you want to be an entrepreneur. Or one other thing is create bioproducts like natural cleaners, enzymes, probiotics. You can tap into the fact that quite a lot of people are moving into green space in terms of green consumer demand, and you can look for ways that you can meet that market need. Okay. We can also validate efficacy plus safety. Publish data for credibility. It's quite important that you do that. And there's certain funding you can apply for if you wanted to go down these routes. I think funding, for Bio Innovation Challenge grants, they're called. You can look into that as well. But you can monetize your work if that's the area you're thinking of. Other thing is you can offer consultancy, for food safety, HACCP audits, you can have a package service if you wanted to, documentation templates that you can tailor towards your company. You can do on-site audits. You can do staff training. I know sometimes I'm requested to do some training for food standard agencies where I've trained 100 food safety officers on sous vide, which is a method of cooking, when you cook food in a vacuum. What is the safety of that? And lots of companies are using this method of cooking because there's uniformity when you cook in a vacuum, in a water, in a hot tub. So I had to develop a training that I went and trained around. So yeah, and I do other training also. So that's something I've marketed myself. I do training. So you can do that, if you're passionate about training. And there are other things, you can leverage problems for tailored biotech solutions, yeah. So regardless of your path, what I'm saying is, you can think of how you can monetize if that's what you want to do, and your work, your research, your passion, it's possible, okay? So what you can do is list one unsolved microbial problem in your community. Could it be a venture that you can look into? Okay? Is this something that can be solved with microbiology? It could possibly, you know? So yeah, leverage local problems and then look for solutions to that. That's one way. But one thing I like to encourage everyone, and I mentioned it briefly, is microbiology in the digital age, so you need to upskill, okay? Even those of us that have jobs and those of you that are looking for jobs, we still need to upskill because of data-driven microbiology. It's the way forward now, So we're moving towards faster. We don't want the old ways of your cultural microorganism wait for the 8 hours to get the result. So there is things that are ongoing now. Machine learning to spot food spoilage, before the smell starts to happen. How can that be done? Those are skills that we can start to think about, So AI-assisted diagnostics and drug delivery, there are certain things that are going, antimicrobial resistance gene, design peptides, and there are quite a few industries that are looking at things like that. So please do skill yourself, remote lab tools, virtual research collaborations, fantastic opportunities, honestly. Even digital publishing is open access platforms, e-learning, those are places you can submit a preprint or complete a data research, mock this year. Challenge yourself, So microbiology in the digital age is something, so it's from the lab up onto writing and amplifying our knowledge, and getting it out there, okay? So we need to really move with the times. So now, in terms of cross-disciplinary integration, this is so sorry. This is quite key to what we're doing. Okay. So working with data scientists, chemists, engineers like I'm doing here and clinicians. So, we had an outbreak before. There was one of our engineers that designed a rapid microfluidic chip. Okay. And a data scientist wrote the arrow scripts that flagged hotspots within the hour. So you can think of one of those, non-microbiological microbiologists whose skills can help sharpen your current project. What is it that you're doing that you need expert, either in data science or something? Think about it. What can help? Get that, translate your work from the petri dish, to coding or medical terminology. I don't know. So look into that. So other thing is microbiology relevance in AI, clean tech, and smart farming. So the relevance in, predicting, like AI predicts enzyme structure for biodegradable plastics, very key. Using microbes to capture CO2 in bioreactors, powering green hydrogen. These are kind of things. Soil microbiome sensors that can guide fertilizer use in precision agriculture. And precision agriculture is something that is up and coming and is going so fast, okay? So you need to think about things like that. Also, when you publish your work, try and publish in interdisciplinary journals as well. Okay, like Nature Communication, and there are other places you can publish that can ensure that other people also read your work and able to collaborate with you and link with you. Okay. So the last point to have here is develop solutions in health tech and biotech industries. So microbial diagnostics on smartphone based labs. Okay, that is something that is quite important and key. People are looking at how can we use our smartphones, even in monitoring fermentation. This is happening now, and also in doing lab-based work. So we wrote a code when we looked at how can we ensure that our fermentation lab we do, that the students are able to key in from anywhere they are and change, like increase of impeller speed, or add some acids or bases to ensure the fermentation is working at optimum temperature and optimum pH, and even increase the heating or reduce the heating, things like that. So we need to be really creative and smart in our thinking. So now, a bit about my journey. Let me come back to it before I round up. I'm rounding up soon. Sorry. So graduated from industrial microbiology and went on to do biomedical sciences, then ended up in chemical engineering. How did I come to chemical engineering? Now, they had a project they were working on, and they were running fermentations. When they run fermentations in small scale, everything is perfect, amazing. Okay, perfect. So mixing is perfect, the microorganisms are happy, perfect. But when they now scale it up to large industrial scale, they encounter problems because they're not getting the product of interest now. Why? Because of heterogeneity in the fermenter environment. What do I mean by that? Because when you start the fermentation, the microbes at the very, bottom might have, proper mixing and oxygen, while the ones at the very, very top don't have enough oxygen, because the mixing, there's so much you can increase the impeller speed. Because if you keep increasing impeller, you have what is called shear force, and that will destroy the microorganism. So, and this is due to improper mixing in large industrial fermenters. So what I did was, using flow cytometry, I was able to resolve the physiology of the microbial cells, and also to using flow cytometry, I was able to show that in the fermenter environment, there are different cells at different stages. Some are stressed, and I was able to prove that we're stressed using molecular technique, and some were healthy, and some were already dead because of starvation or excess glucose, or maybe, if you're feeding in acid, they're dying because the mixing is not proper, the heterogeneity you're creating, and then you have toxic buildup. So you're not getting the products at all. So as a microbiologist, they needed somebody that understood microorganisms at that level, at that cellular level. And I was able to prove with my PhD that when the microorganisms encounter such, heterogeneity, it impacts on their metabolic pathway. They wouldn't produce a product of interest. They go on to produce things to, protect themselves, and they try to conserve every energy they have. So that was the issue. And that led to quite a few. I mean, I ended up going to the House of Commons with the MP to show my work. And that was really good because I had kids at this point. So my children were quite excited because our local newspaper carried it and it was really interesting because we had to go to the House of Commons and present our research. And I was chosen, because showing that microbes are quite sensitive to tiny changes in the environment because that will impact on their metabolism and also on their physiology. That was quite good. I mean, if I wasn't an industrial microbiologist, I wouldn't have found myself if that problem was not created in chemical engineering. I wouldn't have ended up staying in chemical engineering, seeing that there's so many needs that require, a microbiologist there. So I'm just trying to encourage you about interdisciplinary research. Please do not limit yourself. And people, I remember when I was doing my PhD, I had lots of my colleagues like, Helen, what do you think? Your PhD is not going to say microbiology anymore. It's going to say chemical engineering. Are you not bothered about that? And I was like, no, not at all. That shows I'm able to pollinate my skills into something different. And I had a PhD student from Nigeria. He's done his PhD with me, but his greatest worry at the beginning was his PhD is going to read chemical engineering. I was like, no chance. That's going to open doors for you. Being an industrial microbiologist or being a microbiologist, coming and doing a PhD in chemical engineering opens doors. Okay. So I just wanted to share that because I know people worry, should I just keep to my own narrow field? No, please do not. And I'm happy that Muyi talks about what she's doing at the moment, where she started off to where she is now is nothing, it's not the same, but it opens door for you. So I know time is going out, So career advice for early stage, start early, join labs, science clubs, build mentors, get real world exposure, find your niche. What do you really like? Publish, build a professional profile, collaborate. Collaboration is honestly the key. And my work, I do collaborate with quite a lot of research scientists and other, people. It's quite important. And if you're to lead, you need to lead with impact. Align research with societal needs. What are the problems we're having? And also give yourself to mentor others. Because when you mentor others, you learn. Also, I learn a lot from people I mentor. So 4 questions I'd like you to ask yourselves, hopefully, what aspects of microbiology excites me most? What do you are passionate about? I know what excites me. Do I prefer research, industry, or teaching? Because like what you say is you don't have to teach. I love teaching, I love research, and I'm quite happy and blessed, and I love industrial work. So being at the university is giving me the opportunity to do the 3. So that's why I'm happy where I am. But what do you prefer? If you're to go into university, are you able to do the 3, or do you rather go into industry? The choice is yours. Who can I reach out for mentorship? It's very, very important that you see who do you want to work with or who can mentor you into the roles you want. It's quite important. I have mentors. I have, like 2 or 3 mentors. So we all need mentors. Yeah. So there. So just some reflection about my job, my journey. Microbiology is not static. Reinvention is necessary and is essential. Don't forget, the role of infinitely small in nature is infinitely large. I mean, I see microbiology and microbes, to be specific, to be the solution to quite a lot of the problems we have. And what I do sometimes, I challenge myself, what is a global problem we have? Then I look at, can microbiology or be the microbiologist, can I solve that? And most of the time I see, yes, we can. There's a solution to that, And we remember writing an article called Microbial Bioeconomy. And, because there's so much you can make, and even money, if you want to make money, there's economy. You can, if you're thinking about microorganisms. Yeah, you can use them to make money. So the other thing I want to leave you with, success is a combination of knowledge, network, and action. You can't just lie down and think it will happen. No, you need knowledge, you need your networks, and also you have to do something about it. And the last thing is the world is looking for microbiologists for solution. I really, truly believe. And that's why I'm quite passionate and with Applied Microbiology International, because that's their passion. They can see microbiology being the solution to global problems. And that's why I identify with them. So be curious, be bold, take initiatives, collaborate across disciplines and borders, treat your microbiology degree as a passport, not a destination. This is just the beginning. Passport to go to anywhere you want to go. So that's what I want to leave you with. Thank you so much.